Hello, everybody. We welcome you to our Saturday morning Bible study. We're grateful you could join us, and we are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And this morning, our moderator is Shardy from Pennsylvania.
Good morning. I will start with the quote. It's found in Essays and Other Footprints in the Red Book, page 13. Quote, "The Ten Commandments are a perfect digest of wisdom whereby to regulate the routine of life. Without those commands, the science of life had not been expressed. The Ten Commandments carried out are indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality. They are central figures in the group of metaphysical healing, and grafted into every one of its conditions, and the test of them all." End quote.
That's
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, very good. Anyone has any doubt to the importance of the Ten Commandments, these are the words of Mrs. Eddy.
It's interesting that she says, without them, the science of life is not expressed. So behind them is a scientific meaning. It took Jesus Christ and the Sermon on the Mount, Mary Baker Eddy, and Science Health to explain science behind the Ten Commandments.
And, indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality. So people who are suffering from health problems or depressed or this limited sense of life, it's because in many cases they don't know these Ten Commandments, nor are they living them. These are real. They're vital laws to who and what we are, and this is why they mustn't be wiped out. I've been reading a book by David Horowitz it's called Dark Agenda, and then something to the effect the attack on Christianity in America. And the thing I like, he's an agnostic, but he speaks facts. And he is saying factually what did take prayer out of our schools. And here I am, all these years, I've understood it a lot more, but there were actually 2 Supreme Court decisions that did that. While the country, the Christians, we slept on, and certainly the Christian Science movement was sound asleep. Because the way it works with this do-goody sense, do-goody and the poor underdogs or whatever. And in the meantime, their motives are very, very wicked. And I'm telling you, as Christian scientists, we need to be awake to it and what's going on and watch the signs of the time. So, anyway, our children need it. It's indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality. What does the word indispensable mean?
Can't do without it.
Can't do without it. You can't do without it.
And if you try, it doesn't work.
So we're sending ourselves and our children out without this basic knowledge, without the understanding having it written on their foreheads. They're defenseless. We are defenseless. And then we wonder why we have so many troubles and why we can't get out of the troubles. And even so-called Christian scientists. Linda, what did you tell me about your teacher and the commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery? The teacher was not on board with the rules, really, of the Ten Commandments, and that one in particularly. If we can't get it from this, where will we get it? And if we've gotten so flimsy, I mean, I know I have grown children, and maybe they're not going to listen to all of this, but at least you put it out there and say, this is how I believe, this is what has made me happy, this is what has worked in my life, and I stand by it. Then, when they get to be adults, they make their own decisions.
Okay, well, what happened was it was about the second year into my association that he taught all the 10 Commandments. And then I think it was within that period I called for help with an issue with the commandment that she mentioned about adultery. And he did not speak to it whatsoever and did not help me understand it or give me a very firm rebuke or explanation or educate me, instruct me at all in it. It was more about not adulterating the science by mixing it with medicine. And so I got myself in a mess that took me a while to recover. And it was later that I had a physical healing, about a decade later, realizing that what I had done was broken a commandment. And I got on my knees and repented and did not want to ever do that again.
Thank you very much.
I think I remember learning the 10 Commandments, not only in Sunday school, but in the first grade in public school in Alabama a long time ago.
Thank you. Great. I know. Tricia was saying that every day they did the 23rd Psalm. This was in Massachusetts in elementary school when she was a child. And she sent us, which we put in Noteworthy News, where Missouri is.
They passed a bill to allow Bible to be taught in school.
Yeah, an elective course. And this is the only way we're going to get around these Supreme Court decisions that have, goodness, changed the course of our country. And why in the world, this book brings out, for 170 years, we had prayer in our schools, and it was perfectly fine. If a child wanted to say a prayer in school or in the classroom, because we were based and founded on God, our country. And now it's become, no. Well, we can reverse it. There are ways to do it, and we're going to have to.
We were one nation under God with liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
In a recent Bible study, I was reading that they had all these statistics of crimes in our country, and millions of children victimized by pornography and drugs and liquor and suicide and all these other things. And it was saying that all of these things would not have occurred if people were obeying the 10 Commandments.
You can't get around this. You cannot. You cannot name the name Christian Science and read what Mrs. Eddy says about it and say, well, we don't have to obey, and not just some of them, all of them.
They're so really very profound, and it's amazing to me what it really speaks to. I must make a correction here on when I said that Mrs. Eddy said the 8th commandment. She means that thou shalt not steal. And reading deeper into that, she's saying that we steal from God's completeness if we accept matter at all. And that goes a lot to all this. That's why it's indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality. It's very humbling. I'm reading this lady called Emma Stewart. She wrote quite a bit on the 10 Commandments. And each one means so much. And it makes me really appreciate why it's indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality.
Thank you. Absolutely it is. If we were obeying these completely, all of us, it would be an end to a lot of these troubles we're having. And we keep scratching our heads and wondering why it doesn't work. Well, dig deeper. I've told people sometimes you reach this plateau, you have certain healings you want, and they don't seem to be coming. Well, more is required. Dig deeper. The healing is already at hand. It's our ability to see it, and certainly obedience to God's laws. So it's more and more apparent, and I thank God for these Bible studies. They always come right at the right time when we need this reinforcement. Maybe many of you, I'm glad fairly to hear that she was taught the Ten Commandments. I'm sure there are those that are listening who probably maybe weren't, or certainly what it meant, or if they were taught them, they were thought, well, they're not relevant. Well, that was a wonderful quote. Thank you. And I will go back to Linda's quote, which she put on the forum some time ago. But she says, this is Eddie, once said of her secretary, Calvin Fry is invaluable to me in my work because he would not break one of the commandments. Think about it. Think about what he was able to accomplish in her home, that nobody else could bear the weight of it. For 28 years, he stood beside her. And a large part of it was he would not disobey 10 Commandments. You have somebody who has that weakness, who has a weakness to disobey any of them, well, then they fall. Again, the Dixon letter. Only the pure in heart will survive the latter days, and that requires strict obedience to the commandments. Are they difficult? Are they horrible? Is it just terrible that you can't, whatever, think you do all these things you think you want to do? No, they're not. They'll bring the greatest joy and happiness there ever could be. The obedience to them. So thank you, Shark.
And everybody wants to avoid sickness, misery, and death. I was thinking about health, happiness, and immortality, how much of advertising is trying to say that they can bring you some part of that. And
just buy their drug. You'll be a little bit healthier, a little bit happier, and you might live a couple days longer.
Wouldn't it be wonderful, instead of all these obnoxious drug advertisements on television, they would have advertisements for the 10 Commandments? Obey the 10 Commandments?
Yeah, I mean, put one in there every so often instead of all that, the new fancy names for all these other diseases and medications. Right.
They wouldn't have to list all the bad side effects.
No side
No side effects.
Thank you. Yeah, no side effects.
And it's 100% free.
All free, yes. Would eliminate so many problems.
The commercials would be shorter because it would be one thing they're centering on instead of this for this, this for this, this for this, and then go on to another commercial that does the same thing.
Yeah. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and the disclaimer might be, instead of you might die of this, you might live.
You will live. Immortality. Yeah, let's think that, and let's know that there'll be an awakening. And why is that such an impossible thing? It isn't.
They're trying to make us think it's impossible, and that's not going to work.
That's not going to work. It's not.
I wanted to bring out the word engrafted, and that will help us on this watches for the 10 Commandments, because it means to set or fix deeply. That's from the 1828. Inserted into and then fixed deeply. You can't get away.
Yes.
Yeah. That word is very important. Engrafted. Deep within. Okay. Anybody else with this one? Wonderful.
So let's get going. Let's see what they really mean.
Okay. Our topic is a continued study of the 10 Commandments. And reading Deuteronomy 6 this time, because it brings out how they're set in your heart, the commandments. And then also Exodus 20, 1 to 22. And the first one, really, the question, it's not a question, we were asked to be prepared to discuss the following commandments. And we're starting with number 3. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain.
Well, I've been rereading Collectania lately, and I saw that on page 35 of the addenda, there's a spiritual interpretation of the Ten Commandments. So number 3 is creation. Scholastic theology takes God's name in vain by believing his creation is both material and spiritual. As there is but one creator, there is but one creation.
Wonderful. Absolutely. That sort of goes also to what Florence was saying, about what Emma Stewart was saying. Thank you. I mean, there you go. And yet there is so much said about, and that is true, about swearing. I mean, as a child, that's what I thought it was. You weren't supposed to swear, taking his name in vain.
I looked up things.
Bible study tools, yes. Go ahead.
I looked up thing and it said empty, worthless, having no substance. And to me that meant matter.
Thank you. I looked it up too. It said empty, worthless, having no substance, value, or importance. Unreal, false, not effectual. So when you, and this is where I asked Jeremy to find that song of Peter's. When you ask God, when you're in needing help, and you pray to him for help, and yet you don't really think anything's going to happen, it's taking his name in vain. In the song, But a Light Thing, he says, well, I'm going to let Bruce read the whole thing. I love this song. I love it so much.
But a light thing, Peter Kidd. God sent water out of the desert land of Edom without rain or wind or cloud. In the same way, he will deliver you to freedom, though you cannot seem to see a way out. Do you think it's a hard thing to be healed? Well, stop thinking that if you would be restored, it is but a light thing to the Lord. You remember, there was a feeding 5,000 with some bread, a couple fish. Can't you see that you will be fed and clothed and housed and live a life far better than you could wish? You have only desired to find the way. Lift up your thoughts. Waiting, there is your reward. It is but a light thing to the Lord. If you think that you're going to God, but you don't really believe that he will do anything, then you're not really going to God. You're just imagining a vain thing, a waste of time. God provided horses and chariots of fire to destroy the enemy. When you're low down, it is the evil one's desire that you do not claim your right to be free. They are with you are much more than they with them. The Almighty is your shield and your sword. It is but a light thing to the Lord.
Put that on the carousel, right? The singing of it, the singing. I so love that. And so what are you struggling with? And are you taking God's name in vain that you deep down really think it's ineffectual, won't help? Or maybe it'll help a little bit, but really the medical has the answer, or whatever else goes through your head.
You have to do it with your heart. You can't say the words and say, oh, I prayed to God, and move on. It's not in your heart, forget it.
If it's not in your heart, forget it. And remember, when Peter took this song from that there's a little verse. What chapter is that? Well, you can look it up. It's just a little verse. It's in there where the water of Edom He says, but a light thing to the Lord, even though there's been a drought. Whatever your problem is, it's but a light thing to the Lord. Don't take his name in vain by thinking he can't do it. He can do it, and you have to start out. What does that Bible verse say in Hebrews, is it? You have to come to the Lord, you have to believe.
Come boldly unto the throne of grace.
That one, but there's another. You have to believe that he is, and that he will answer your prayer. You've got to come with that.
That expectation.
Yeah, with that expectation. As Lil said, you've got to be deep within you. And that's not taking the Lord in vain. That's a true faith and belief in him. Creator of all things, the creator of you. You think there's some little thing in you that he can't deal with? Someone has their computer on. Go ahead.
But to so believe in something, you say, oh, I have pneumonia, or I have a cold, and then calling God to heal you, you've already denied his omnipotence, his allness. And so that was just so clear. It's like, okay, that is calling his name in vain. Come and heal me of this thing that I have.
This thing in matter, yep, it's the dualism, as Jeremy said.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right.
As Evans used to call it, straddling the fence. One leg in the camp of spirit and one leg in the camp of matter, and you're hoping that one of those legs will work.
Fall off the fence.
And instead, you fall off the fence or you get ripped in half. But it's the mental attitude that is required in order for any of the other commandments to make sense. If you start out with the expectation that the God who made us cares for us in every conceivable way, if you start out with that, then you are receptive to the truth that does heal. But if you doubt, and how many times did Jesus chastise his disciples for doubting? If you doubt that God can do anything or do something that's necessary, well, then you cut yourself off, like Lawrence said. You're basically putting yourself outside of the law that is your safety. Now it's a test, isn't it? It's not. This is a work in process for most of us. Getting to the point where we have that confidence. And a lot of people don't get that level of confidence in this lifetime unless they've been down so far that they have no place else to go.
Go ahead, Florence.
I think that this is why Mrs. Eddy tells us that the first commandment is so imperative, because then we will start with a standpoint or a viewpoint of God's allness. There is nothing else. And from that, then we can call on God and know that we're really appealing to be revealed our perfection and not believing in something else, something apart from him, and then calling his name. So the first commandment, he's right to say that.
Yep.
I looked up the definition of name, and one of them was reputation, character. And I recognize now that the corrupt presentation of the true God obscures his character, name, when one never hears the truth, which is his goodness. And then I really like this from 1828 Webster's definition. In Scripture, the name of God signifies his titles, his attributes, his will or purpose, His honor and glory, His word, His grace, His wisdom, power and goodness, His worship and our service, our God Himself.
Thank you, Mike. It's beautiful.
I like that about reputation, too, because it says of Jesus that He made Himself with no reputation. He wasn't trying to get His own name out there.
He let people speak for themselves.
I was looking up some things on the internet in regards to this, and I found something by John Piper, and he says, vain is empty. Don't empty God's name, or don't empty God's weight and glory. Fill it up rather than emptying it. I thought that was an interesting take on that.
Thank you. You know, and this is part of the way, again, this attack on Christianity is to get people to think that God is responsible for all the problems, that He doesn't answer prayer, all kinds of things. They take the old theology or negative aspects and they emphasize that. They emphasize it to your children. That's why if you don't give it to them at home, they're not getting it. And so we must stand up strong, because sometimes it makes me so mad when I think of what people are saying about God. You know, it's like they're talking about your best friend in the worst terms. So that you can take offense to and fight back. That's an offense to God. And if we don't represent Him, we don't stand up for Him, who will? Don't allow that talk, not in your presence.
I try to be a better example of what God's laws mean. So.
Example is most important.
Praying about this, taking the name of the Lord in vain, one thing that hit me today was, if I approach God very casually, then I don't have any expectation of good. I'm a sitting duck. I mean, God wants our whole heart. You know, He's the one who's ever present, all powerful and everything. Who's going to be so casual about approaching someone like that? So, and the thing that would cause me to be casual is if I'm thinking about myself. And that's the other aspect of vain. You know, something that's done for selfish interests. You know, I want to ask God for my selfish preferences instead of humbly bowing before Him, knowing that His will is the only good. If I have selfish interests that are weighing heavily on my mind, then I have a misconception of what's good. And that would cause me to be casual about approaching God. It's not the one to be careful with, one to be careful to be submissive to.
Another way is if you think, well, He's not going to hear my prayer. Or He hears Joni Smith's prayer, but He won't hear my prayer. That's taking His name in vain. He's made all of us, and there's no exception. And, I've heard that. Talk about the negative human mind. You know, a person can come to a testimony meeting, hear all these wonderful testimonies, and come away with, and I've heard this, oh, He does that for everybody, but He won't do it for me, or He doesn't hear me. Well, honey, you're disobeying a commandment. You better stop it. We got to be clear on this, because if we're not clear and we get murky, we think some of this stuff is okay, and it's not okay. The little foxes spoil the vine. I used to think that. I used to think He didn't hear my prayer. For some reason it wasn't being answered. Well, I was wrong. I had to stop it.
What does it say? Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss.
That's right. I had to learn what real prayer was. what it was about. At that time, I didn't know. Go ahead.
There's one thing that's helped me many times in the past, is when there needed to be a decision to be made, a direction to go, not quite sure which. I would simply make the declaration, there is an answer. Even though I may not know exactly what it is. It kind of like opened up the receptivity for the answer that is always there. Simple statement. There is an answer.
If the answer wasn't there, there wouldn't be the question. So.
I do that with decisions, too. I always pray that the decision is already made because God made it. And just let me see it.
Thank you. Yeah, if I have something I'm not sure about, I'll sometimes ask God, pose it at night before I go to bed and say, I need help, Father, please. Then in the early morning, the answers, 9 times out of 10, they come. God just starts speaking to me. And I know it's not me because I couldn't have thought up those answers, telling me what needs to be done. Or giving me what I should write a lesson about, or all kinds of direction. So it works wonderfully in the early morning hours, not the silence.
It's a comforting voice. It's just beautiful, so different.
Yes, it is. It is. That's so true. Please, who else has something to say about this?
I'd like to say a few months ago, one of the beginning quotes for the Bible study, I think it was from Miss Laney, where Mrs. Eddy said that peace, peace, where there is no peace, was taking the Lord's name in vain. And I thought about that a lot, and I actually wrote myself up a thing, just saying truth, truth, where there is no truth, and going down all the synonyms. And that has really helped me to see points where I was thinking that I was doing the right thing, but no, I wasn't really. So, and in fact, even the other day, I was thinking comfort, comfort, but there is no comforter. There's so much to be found in this.
That's wonderful.
That's a great thought.
Yeah.
It is. Great.
If you're believing in the no comfort and calling His name.
Wow, that's something really he has to think deeply about.
Well, it gets back to matter, doesn't it? Whether you believe that there is life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. If you're looking for truth in matter, or comfort in matter, or anything in matter, taking the name of the Lord in vain.
And it's a common thing with Christian Scientists, that peace, peace where there is no peace. Mrs. Evans loved to quote that. Because she would see, maybe a relationship with your wife or husband or with a child or something. And it wasn't right. It wasn't normal or natural. It wasn't loving. And yet the Christians thought, oh, yeah, everything's fine. It's all fine. No, it's not all fine until you prove it's all fine. And peace, peace where there is no peace. And that's taking God's name in vain. And it's also making Christian Scientists look like stupid idiots.
So this is a Sunday school question. Who said that in the Bible? Peace, peace, there is no peace. Who said that in the Bible?
Jeremiah.
Yes. Jeremiah 6, verse 14.
Thank you.
That was good. Wouldn't have gotten that much.
All right.
Good old Jeremiah.
It's a very important statement. And then to expand it to other truth where there's no truth.
Comfort where there is no
comfort.
Got to be the real thing. It's got to be God. And if you say it's okay when it's not. You are taking his name in vain, and that's not a good thing. It's got to be the real thing. It's got to be really his peace. It's got to be his truth, his comfort. None other.
Harmony, when there's so much resentment underneath.
Yes. Thank you. And I was a master at this. This was me.
Oh, it was most of
Yes, we've all lived it.
Unfortunately, that was my idea of Christian Science. You just stiff up her lip, old girl.
You be diplomatic and the error just goes away. Well, it doesn't just go away. You have to stand up to it and sometimes beat the crap out of it so that it knows you're serious. And then you can't be worried about hurting other people's feelings. Because that's not peace.
And we were taught here, if you do that, it's like sitting on a can of TNT. Is that what it is?
A keg of powder, right.
And eventually it is going to explode. Boy, oh boy, you will not like it. Mm-mm-mm. You're just sitting on it. Peace, peace, there is no peace. But you're saying peace, peace, and everything's roiled up. Your husband or your wife's treating you terribly, or your child is acting terribly, and you're just peace, peace. Nuh-uh.
Ticking time bomb.
Yes, it is. I mean, if you're ignoring it and just saying the truth. If you're working on it, that's different. But when you're ignoring it, just claiming the name and saying the words. And unfortunately, it's very prevalent in Christian Science. People don't know better. And I know it because I did it. And I thought I was being a good Christian Scientist until Mrs. Evans set me straight.
Right, because you're not doing yourself any good.
It was the cause for chronic anxiety. It was why I was anxious all the time, because I was disobedient to God. I wasn't facing problems. I was just saying the words. You can't just say the words and expect everything to be hunky-dory. Got to live it. Got to confront the problem as God directs you to.
And that is how you find health and happiness and immortality.
Yes. And all that anxiety goes.
Well, I'm just glad for all this teaching has set me straight, because I'm just kind of amazed that I was never taught the Ten Commandments in anything but in a superficial way, if at all. Growing up in Sunday school, and there was just no tough love. There was just no, I needed tough love and never got it until I came to Plainfield. And that is the only way my entire life turned around. And, it's just such a gift. I feel like tough love is considered something bad, and we can't cause any discomfort. All is well. Everything's fine. And just gloss over everything. And I don't know. This is just so precious, this time with the Ten Commandments.
That's why we were all attracted to Plainfield, because Mrs. Evans had tough love, and it's tough love that heals. Nothing else heals.
She also taught the practical living of the science. I was just so amazed when I started to listen to those tapes. It's just something so different, living it.
Yeah, and it is natural when you catch a glimpse of what it really is. There's nothing weird about it.
It's freedom. It's freeing from being freed from all these snares.
Yes.
And one simple, practical way was if you had a healing, you got up and you testified. You didn't just sit on your, you know what, week after week after week after week and listen to everybody else. You shared your healing.
Because you were not ashamed that you had a problem in the first place.
Had no pride. And also, Mrs. Evans used to tell me, I was terrified about giving testimonies, she said, when you're grateful enough, you'll get up. And if you're not grateful, you won't get up, period. And so we had a Wednesday evening full of testimonies. And that was just one practical way of living it. And no one had ever told me that before, and I don't think I had ever given a testimony up until that time. So.
It's a good segue into the next.
Yes, it is. Anybody else? Those were all wonderful things everyone said. Thank you.
Okay. Let's do commandment number 4. Remember the Sabbath day.
And keep it holy. And Jeremy?
From Collectania, it just says reign of harmony.
One of the things it says is to remember. Doesn't the human mind like to forget things, get blessings, get comfortable, and then forget about them and walk away? Not acknowledge their source, nor commit your life to seeking God and sharing His Word?
Thank you. Good point.
I love this. This is so wonderful to get into the depths of these commandments. What somebody was saying, the rest is not to be aimless rest, but God-centered rest. Keep the day holy by keeping the focus on the holy God. I mean, it seems obvious now, but God-centered rest. Not just turning on the TV and saying, I don't need to work today, and just zoning out.
Thank you.
That's not right. That's not Sabbath. Sabbath is taking the time to thank God. We have a Sabbath on Sunday. That's when we have our church service. But we also have a Sabbath on Wednesday evenings, don't we? To thank God. And why is it in our best interest, and why is it a fundamental principle to be grateful? Why is that?
Keeps the door open for other wonderful things that can be worked out.
It is your connection with God. Yes. It opens the door to all the good that God has for you. When you're ungrateful, when you zone out, you shut the door. And what a shame.
I will say, in my own experience, if I'm, feeling unconnected to God, I would say even 100% of the time, I've lost my gratitude somewhere. You want to feel God's presence, you start thanking Him. Him, not necessarily all the presents He's brought you, but Him, life, truth, love. You start being grateful for that. You'll find your connection. You'll find your joy. And this we are commanded. I mean, every day we should be doing it. But we have 2 days out of the week, and we're asked to give an hour. And again, we were taught here, you get up, you come to church or Sunday school or whatever, spend that time praising God, sharing this truth with others, giving back what you have received. Because we come to give. Initially, you may come to get, but the purpose of our service is you come to give. That's why we like all you to participants. Anyway, your day is going to go so much better. The rest of the day, the rest of the week. I can't imagine a Sunday without church. I was raised on it, but, people, I see them out jogging or bike riding or going to brunch. Without church, it's all empty.
Jesus said in the book of Mark 2, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And I read in a Bible study, Sabbath was to renew his strength and reevaluate his activities in the light of eternity.
Very good.
And, he rebuked the Pharisees in a few instances about that. Why? Concerning the Sabbath day.
They'd made a ritual of it, and that if you didn't follow their ritual, then they felt that they had cause to find fault with you. Whereas, like Daniel, if you could just go to your window and pray to your Father 3 times a day, in that sweet hour of prayer, you're reestablishing the Sabbath every time you do that.
Yeah. The Pharisees were mad at Jesus for healing on the Sabbath day. Good grief.
Good grief is right.
Yeah.
So he turned it around.
Well, to them, they were going through the motions, and healing wasn't the motions that they approved of.
So we keep it holy is a big part of that commandment. And again, I was very sorry when the blue laws, we had those blue laws in New Jersey for such a long time, and that meant you did not go shopping. Everybody had the Sabbath off. You all took that day off. It was just a recognition of God. And now everything's open, and people do all kinds of things on Sunday, other than
trying to find their health, happiness, and immortality.
Their health, happiness, immortality in somewhere else. In the store, yes, and they're jogging with all their, equipment.
Tennis court, golf course.
We'll find all of that.
Good luck. Good luck.
I'm very grateful that I read chapter 5 in Deuteronomy by mistake. It says in 14, "But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. That thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor thine cattle, nor the stranger within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou." And as somebody had said earlier, that rest being in the service of God would make the world such a better place.
Mike.
And then also, I think it's so important to remember, and Deuteronomy 5:15 says also on the Sabbath day, "And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by the stretched out arm. And therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day." And I think it's so important because so many people that have been brought up in tough times, etc., then they inflict it upon others because they don't remember what they had done or what they had gone through. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so never forget what God has done for you. Be grateful for it, and you will have a strong connection. And it's the safest place we could ever be.
It's very common now in schools that they have all these events. I mentioned this before, too. I know our children did, where, there were plays or tennis tournaments or other things on Sunday morning. Like, excuse me? And it didn't happen. I know my children are probably still mad at me, They weren't allowed to participate, and I let the teachers and the coaches and anyone else involved know and how I felt. And I was hopping mad. All the other times during the week. But they think Sunday morning, well, no one's doing anything then. What a thing to think. So, and that beautiful movie, Chariots of Fire, is about that. If you haven't seen that, it's a good one.
Good movie. Chariots of Fire.
And it won an Oscar award in those days. That was great. Who else will tell us about remembering the Sabbath day?
I read a commentary that used. Go ahead.
Oh, I found this article called "The Grace of God in Vain" by J.C. Ryle, and it starts with the 2 Corinthians. And I was thinking of taking Lord's name in vain when I saw this, but it says "the grace of God in vain." From 2 Corinthians 6, "We then, as workers together with him, beseech you, that you receive not the grace of God in vain." And I think it actually goes better with the remember the Sabbath day. And one line in this article says he's talking about Paul, would not have them soothe their conscience with the idea that all was safe because they'd been baptized in the name of Jesus. But as a faithful laborer in God's vineyard, he calls on them to examine themselves and beware lest they receive the grace of God in vain, and not in a conversation not recognize that or be grateful for that. I think it goes in really well with remember the Sabbath day, remember the grace of God.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think from my experience, we were taught that on Sunday you just look forward to going to Sunday school, just like on Monday you get ready to go to school. It was just something we had to do, and I think because my parents were always also going to church on Sunday, we look forward to it. It's something that can be done if parents are interested or committed to it themselves. Then the kids will follow. It was an exciting time for us.
Thank you. I agree. I felt the same way. It was a happy time. We went to church. I used to live within walking distance of this church. We would walk to church. It was so much fun. And then on the way home, we would stop at the deli on Park Avenue and have cupcakes.
Part of the routine of life.
It was just wonderful. And I have the happiest memories of that.
We had little books that we would cut pictures, Bible story pictures. So it was an exciting time, really, for every Sunday what picture I was going to get and learn from. So it can be a fun time.
And I had friends at church that were different from the friends that I had at school.
Yes, yeah, I had friends at church too. That's right. Yes. In fact, one of my most treasured childhood friends I met in our Sunday school. Yes, it can be such a happy time in so many ways. And that woman, I read her letter a few weeks ago where she'd been going to a Baptist church, but somebody in her family had been healed through Christian Science, and she had to take a bus and go quite a distance to go to a little church, I think in Savannah, Georgia, a Christian Science church. And she was, 11 or 12 or something. She looked forward. She was not going to miss that coming to Sunday school at the Christian Science church because it meant so much to her. That's a beautiful thought. It is a happy time. Thank you, Florence. The treasured morning with God.
That's why we are instructed to keep our joy. Because it's the only real joy there is. It's gratitude for the good that God has given us.
You all, many of you come to church, well, you come to your computer and sit and listen. But when I've been away, it's amazing how I feel like I'm in the church. I mean, the music, the way Jeremy broadcasts everything, and just close your eyes and you're all here with us. It is the church without walls. You can even go get cupcakes after it's over.
But not during.
No, not during. No. Gotta wait till after.
Yeah, that's one wonderful thing about here. I know everybody here doesn't feel any separation between, us here and us over the phone or whatever.
Yeah, hearing these voices around the country reading lesson or fruitage or scriptural, yeah, it's wonderful. You're all part of the service.
It's actually something to be very thankful for those of you who step up and want to contribute, give.
Yeah.
And, everybody's got their part and things to do. But if you hear from the same people all the time, it gets a little dry after a while. If somebody new steps in, it's like, whoa, it's so refreshing.
It is. And that's definitely true Wednesday nights, too. Hear from all of you around the country and the world.
Mrs. Eddy states that clearly somewhere in Miscellany, that the Christian Science churches are democratic and rotation in office, some of the fundamental aspects of Christian Science.
Chapter 12, Miscellany.
Chapter 12, Miscellany.
And people notice it, our musicians who didn't come from Christian Science churches, but, they're well aware of all these people all around, Wednesdays and Sundays, and it's actually quite impressive. And that, dear Diana, who from Germany, she sends in her testimony quite frequently. And those of you who write your testimonies from around the world and the country, and they get read, you're contributing to this, and you're building it up. And then Carol turns them all into the Liberator magazine. So you're all contributing to that.
We did a study on the 88th and 89th church manuals, and what fascinated me was on paper there was a very, very little difference that I could find, and I may have missed something, but I think the thing that struck me the most was this very subtle, the separation that was supposed to be between the mother church, the branch churches, in the 89th manual actually brought the branch churches under a more direct control of the mother church, which the 88th made very clear that that was not to be.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And thinking scientists, here's that one out.
Yep, they snuck that one in there the moment Mrs. Eddy passed away.
Because they were ungrateful.
They didn't see it.
And they didn't see her correctly.
They
were
didn't see her correctly. Didn't see it correctly.
So, just for historical fact, I think interesting to know, I was reading about a church, I believe it was in Macon, Georgia. It was in Georgia, pretty sure. It was Macon, but the church existed before there ever was a manual. So there were Christian Science churches and no manual. You think about that.
Wow, well, that's...
Yep.
Yeah.
There was a gap when there was no official mother church, and there were branch churches, so to speak. So you're completely correct. So they were there first before the organized mother church, and Mrs. Eddie was completely regretful that she had to write a church manual because she meant it to be between God and man, not a manual in between them.
Yeah, she says that about the manual, doesn't it? That in a way it was a disappointment, but in a way it was a great joy. Because she was doing something that she thought she would never do, and that is to tell Christian Scientists what they could not do.
In the Liberator.
It's in our Liberator magazine.
Read it. It's really good.
Didn't she say that the manual was for those who didn't understand the Ten Commandments?
I don't know whether she said that, but she did say that it was divinely inspired.
Well, I'll research that because I'm positive I read that.
And that obedience to the manual was necessary for people to be able to heal, practice Christian Science. It's not a quote, but
it would make sense, though, because if they were obeying the Ten Commandments, they would do what the manual said. So
exactly.
She knew. She put it on a par with her other writing. It was because she knew it was God-given. And as I've mentioned, even some of the finest lawyers in the world said it is a total masterpiece. And what she did was she dissolved Central Organization at her passing. She knew it had to be. It had to be. And that's why this whole organization thing is doomed to failure. It's hard for me to say that. It's been hard for me to even accept it but I do understand it. It is doomed for failure. All these churches are going to end up all closing, and Lord knows what will happen to the cement center, as I call it, because it was not based on what she had wanted.
It deviated. From the manual.
But the church itself, and when you read about that and the building of the church, that's a holy temple. It's a holy idea. And the idea of branch churches is a holy temple, and it's a holy idea. So that will never, ever go down the chute. It's impossible. It'll continue just as we have continued. And as I've said, I believe it's the first time we've ever had anyone call, and they call from California, sincerely interested into making their church an independent church. And we will help them do that. Maybe this will be a new thing. And God directs.
I think I've heard also some people have asked me, so, well, how will we write our lessons and things like that? But why would you doubt if God, God is directing you? It's freedom to be under God's control, to be led to do these amazing things. Is God doing it? So
exactly. Thank you, Florence. And it is but a light thing for the Lord.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of proves where you're at with God.
And those of you that write lessons will testify that it is one of the most wonderful ways of growing in science. Because you have to get yourself out of the way and let God work in issues. And as in anything, it's called demonstration. But it's a wonderful way to grow. And it's been a great thing. I mean, we asked that question, too. Good night. What are we going to do? But God provided everything. And these writing lessons and doing all this stuff is for the growth of the whole congregation. Those of you that write Wednesday lessons. All of it. How you grow, the spiritualization of thought. And it's wonderful. Why let one church have all the fun, for heaven's sake?
It's seen as fun.
Wasn't it?
It's not seen as fun, that's why. It's seen as, oh my gosh, what are we going to do, so.
I have to actually spend time on this. But once you start, you'll find out how rewarding it is. Go ahead, Mike, were you speaking?
Yes, I was going to say, wasn't that the whole start of the quote-unquote little rebellion from Plainfield that Mrs. Evans noticed at the Wednesday night readings were keeping people awake, and everybody was falling asleep on Sunday, so to speak.
That's exactly right. Absolutely right. Yes. Yes.
Yes, and that was after we were excommunicated. We still used the Boston lesson for a while.
Because what will we do?
Because that's all we had, and it was poison. It put people to sleep. It made people sick, literally.
As did the magazines, the literature. And I don't know if it doesn't make you sick. Well, then I don't know. But it made me sick. Made a lot of people sick because they felt the thought behind it, and the thought behind it was not pure. So
it was disobedience to the manual, and obedience is what the Ten Commandments is all about. And that's how I finally even thought about with my teacher. While some of the teaching sounded correct, what was behind it was always disobedience.
Correct. And that's what the next commandment is all about.
but as this all was operating, it was like a spider's web being woven and putting everybody to sleep. And that's how we could have 2 Supreme Court rule prayer out of our schools while we slept on with this spider's web going. So thank God we're awake now and we can reverse it. And it is but a light thing to the Lord. Yes. So thank you, Shardy.
Yeah, thank you,
Shardy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you.